Mystical City of God, translated from the original Spanish by Michael Kress, read by the translator. Book 1, Chapter 20, What Happened During the 9 Months of St. Anne's Pregnancy, and What the Most Holy Virgin Did in the Womb, as well as her mother during that time. Conceived without original sin, as has already been said, the Blessed Virgin Mary was entirely absorbed in God from the very first moment of her existence. That first vision of the divinity captivated her soul completely, making God the sole object of her love, a love that began in the small, hidden tabernacle of her mother's womb and would never be interrupted, not in life nor in eternity, where she now reigns in glory at the right hand of her most holy Son, to nurture her contemplation and divine love, beyond the infused knowledge of created things that she received in that first vision of the most Holy Trinity. God granted her 2 additional mystical visions of himself during the 9 months she spent in the womb. In total, before she was even born, the Holy Trinity manifested itself to her 3 times. First, at the very instant of her conception; second, about halfway through her time in the womb; and third, on the day before her birth. Even when these extraordinary visions ceased, Mary never lacked a profound interior light by which she saw God through faith. This supernatural contemplation was far above anything ever experienced by any other soul in this world. These mystical encounters were so high and close to the beatific vision itself that, although they did not yet belong to the state of heavenly glory, they were not meant to be continuous in her earthly life. However, they left a deep imprint on her soul, elevating her entirely into the fire of divine love. Thus, while still in her mother's womb, Mary exercised countless acts of adoration, love, and reverence toward God. She interceded unceasingly for all humanity, already acting as a mediatrix between heaven and earth. She was in constant communication with the angels, who attended her with deep reverence. In the midst of these divine occupations, she never experienced the natural discomforts of confinement in her mother's womb. She was so wholly absorbed in the presence of her beloved God that she paid no attention to her physical limitations, nor did she feel the absence of sensory experiences. Her spirit was already more in heaven than on earth. The third and final mystical vision she received in the womb came with even greater blessings. In it, God revealed to her that the time of her birth was near, and that she would soon enter the world to dwell among mortals. Obedient to the divine will, the Princess of Heaven responded, "Almighty God, Lord of my being, life of my soul, infinite in perfection and goodness, incomprehensible, all-powerful and rich in mercy, you created me from nothing and without any merit of my own, have enriched me with the treasures of your divine grace, allowing me to know you from the first instant of my existence. You have been the first object of my love, and I have desired no good apart from you, my true and supreme joy. Now, you command me to leave this hidden sanctuary and enter the world to live among your creatures. In your divine presence, where all things are seen clearly, as in a most radiant mirror, I have beheld the perils of this mortal life, and the miseries of the human condition. If in this life my weakness and fragile nature might cause me to stray, even for an instant, from your service and love, if there is even the smallest risk that I could lose you, then let me die now before I enter the world. But, my Lord and Master, if it is your will that I pass into this uncertain and stormy sea of earthly existence, I humbly entrust myself to you. Govern my life, direct my steps, and guide all my actions to be pleasing to you. Order love within me, so that when I begin to engage with the world, my love for you will only grow stronger. In you, I have seen the ingratitude of so many souls, and I fear rightly, since I share their nature, that I too could fall into the same fault. Here, in the narrow cavern of my mother's womb, I have enjoyed the infinite expanse of your divinity. Here I possess all good, for I possess you, my beloved. And since you alone are my portion and my inheritance, Psalm 73, verse 26, I do not know if, once I leave this enclosure, I will lose sight of you when exposed to another light and to the use of my senses. If it were possible and fitting to renounce the path of life before me, I would willingly give up everything and remain as I am. But not my will, Lord, but yours be done. So grant me your blessing and favor as I enter the world, and do not withdraw from me your divine protection. Having made this prayer, the Holy Child received the blessing of the Almighty, who commanded her with sovereign authority to go forth into the world, and instructed her on what she was to do in fulfillment of her holy desires. What happened during the 9 months of St. Anne's pregnancy and the trials she endured? The Blessed Mother, St. Anne, carried her pregnancy in a state of deep spiritual joy, experiencing divine consolations and graces in her soul. However, divine providence, in its wisdom, willed that her journey not be entirely without trials. Just as a ship carries ballast to stabilize it on the sea, St. Anne was given some burdens to ensure her spiritual growth and merit, for without trials, the fruits of grace and love are not fully achieved. To understand what happened to this holy woman, we must remember that after the devil and his fallen angels were cast down from heaven into eternal torment, they became ever watchful, constantly searching among the women of Israel for the one foretold in prophecy. Lucifer knew that a woman would one day bear the one who would crush his head. Cf. Gen 3:15, Revelation 12 verse 1. And his rage burned against all who were especially virtuous, fearing that they might be the chosen vessel. In his relentless hatred, he did not entrust this task solely to his infernal subordinates, but took it upon himself to observe the most virtuous women of the old law, watching for any sign that might reveal the one destined to bring his downfall. With this malicious intent, Lucifer turned his attention to St. Anne, noticing her extraordinary holiness and the divine favors she received, though God prevented him from fully understanding the treasure hidden in her womb. He sensed a powerful force emanating from her, one that weakened and tormented him. This inexplicable power unsettled him, at times driving him into a frenzy of rage. At other moments, however, he would pacify himself, convincing his wicked mind that Anne's pregnancy was nothing more than an ordinary conception occurring through natural means. The Lord allowed him to remain blinded by his own ignorance, keeping him restless and confounded in the turbulent waves of his own arrogance. Even so, the devil could not help but be disturbed by the remarkable peace surrounding St. Anne's pregnancy. At times he perceived the presence of numerous angels guarding her, which only increased his frustration. But what tormented him most was that he felt powerless against the force emanating from her. It even led him to suspect that this power did not come from St. Anne alone. Agitated by these fears, the dragon resolved to take her life if he could. If that failed, he would at least attempt to make her suffer greatly during her pregnancy. Such was Lucifer's overweening pride that he believed he could either defeat or destroy the woman destined to be the mother of the incarnate Word. He even dared to think he could triumph over the Messiah, the Redeemer of the world. This arrogance was rooted in his belief that, as an angel, his nature was superior to human nature in power and strength. He did not comprehend that grace is infinitely superior to both angelic and human nature, and that all creatures remain subject to the will of their Creator. With this audacity, he launched his attack on St. Anne, filling her mind with doubts, anxieties, and temptations. He whispered to her that her pregnancy was an illusion, a deception caused by her old age and long years of infertility. He sought to exploit any weakness in her soul, hoping to gain even the smallest foothold through which he could disturb her peace and influence her will. But the valiant matron, St. Anne, resisted these assaults with unwavering courage, humble fortitude, and continuous prayer. Her faith in God never wavered, and she utterly rejected the devil's lies. The more he tempted her, the more she grew in grace, and the more God strengthened his protection over her. The holy angels, assigned to guard her most holy daughter, also defended Anne herself. They repeatedly drove the demons away from her presence, preventing them from causing her harm. But Lucifer, in his relentless malice, did not give up. Since he could not directly overpower her, he turned to human instruments, believing that through them he could achieve what he could not accomplish by himself. He first attempted to destroy the home of St. Anne and her husband, St. Joachim, hoping that the fear and distress would shake her resolve. However, the holy angels intervened, foiling his wicked plan. Enraged, he incited certain women, acquaintances of St. Anne, to turn against her. These women, weak in spirit and lacking virtue, were filled with an unnatural anger and began to insult and mock St. Anne. With cruel words, they ridiculed her pregnancy, calling it a deception of the devil and scoffing at the idea that, after so many years of barrenness and advanced age, she would suddenly claim to be with child. St. Anne was not disturbed by this temptation. Rather, with great gentleness and charity, she bore the insults and responded with kindness to those who mistreated her. From that moment, she regarded these women with even greater affection and did them greater acts of kindness. However, their anger did not subside quickly, for they had given themselves over to the influence of the devil, who fueled their hatred toward the saint. Once a person submits to this cruel tyrant, he tightens his grip, making them more willing to obey his wicked commands. He thus incited these weak instruments to attempt some harm against St. Anne's person and life. Yet, they were powerless to execute their intentions, for divine virtue rendered their feeble efforts ineffective. In the end, they could do nothing against the saint. Instead, she conquered them with her gentle admonitions, and ultimately led them to repentance through her prayers. With this, the dragon was defeated, but not entirely subdued. He quickly sought another means to trouble her. This time he took advantage of a servant who worked in the household of St. Joachim and St. Anne, stirring her up against the saint. This trial was worse than the previous one because it came from within her own home, making it more persistent and dangerous. I will not linger on all the ways the enemy used this servant against St. Anne, for they were the same tactics he had used with the other women, only now with greater intensity and distress. Yet with divine assistance, St. Anne emerged victorious from this temptation even more gloriously than before. The guardian of Israel, who never sleeps, was watching over his holy city, PS 121:4, and had fortified her with strong sentinels, his most valiant angels, who repelled Lucifer and his demons, preventing them from further disturbing the Blessed Mother. Now, as the time for the glorious birth of the Princess of Heaven approached, St. Anne prepared herself with heroic acts of virtue and merit, gained through these battles. The long-awaited moment was near, and I too long for the conclusion of these chapters, so that I may hear the salutary teachings of my Lady and Mistress. Though she provides me with everything I write, what I treasure most is her maternal guidance. I await her words with joy and exultation of spirit. The Virgin Mary's response to a question about fear and grace. Speak then, my lady, for your servant is listening, and if you permit me, though I am but dust and ashes, I wish to ask a question that has arisen in my heart while reading this chapter. Since I entrust all things to your maternal wisdom as my mother, teacher, and mistress, I ask you this. How is it that, being the sovereign lady of all creation, conceived without sin, and endowed from the first instant with such high knowledge of all things through the vision of the divinity, you still experienced such great fear and anxiety over not offending God or losing his friendship? If, from the very beginning, grace preserved you from sin, how could you fear losing it? And if the Most High exempted you from original sin, how could you ever fall into any other offense against him who had kept you from the first? The Doctrine and Response of the Queen of Heaven. My daughter, listen to the answer to your question. In the vision I had of the divinity at the first moment of my existence, I understood my innocence, and that I had been conceived without sin. However, such gifts and graces that come from the hand of the Most High bring with them an even greater sense of responsibility. The more one recognizes the security and grandeur of divine gifts, the greater the care and vigilance required to preserve them and not offend their divine author, who grants them out of sheer goodness. The soul perceives with utmost clarity that these gifts are not deserved, but given solely by God's mercy and through the merits of my most holy Son. The creature sees its own unworthiness and insufficiency in contrast to these graces, and realizes that what it has received does not belong to itself. Since all things come from a superior cause, who grants them freely, he also has the power to withdraw them and give them to whomever he wills. This realization naturally produces a holy concern to safeguard grace with great diligence, to cultivate it, and to increase the talents entrusted to the soul. CM 25:16F. The only way not to lose what is given as a sacred deposit is to use it entirely for the glory of its Creator. Understanding this is essential to retaining the blessings of grace. Moreover, in this light, the fragility of human nature and the freedom of the will to choose between good and evil also become evident. The Most High did not take this knowledge from me, nor does he remove it from anyone in this life. Rather, he leaves it as a safeguard, ensuring that the soul remains rooted in the holy fear of falling, even into the slightest fault. In me, this light was even greater, for I saw how even the smallest imperfection leads to greater ones, and how one fault opens the door to another, each one being both the effect and the punishment of the one before. It is true that, because of the gifts and graces God had worked in my soul, it was not possible for me to sin. However, divine providence arranged this benefit in such a way that he did not reveal to me an absolute security of never sinning. I knew that by myself I was capable of falling, and that only by his divine will would I be preserved from doing so. Therefore, God kept the knowledge of my security hidden from me and left me with the responsibility and holy fear of not sinning as I walked my earthly path. From my conception to my death, I never lost this holy fear. Rather, it grew within me as my life progressed. The Most High also granted me discretion and humility so that I would not question or scrutinize this mystery. My sole concern was to trust in his goodness and love, believing that he would always assist me in remaining free from sin. From this, two essential effects arose, effects necessary for the Christian life. First, my soul remained in perfect peace. Second, I never lost the vigilance and careful effort to guard my treasure of grace. Since my fear was filial, it did not diminish my love for God. Rather, it enkindled it all the more. The harmony of love and fear within my soul ordered all my actions, keeping me ever far from evil and ever more intimately united with the supreme good. My friend, this is the greatest test of spiritual matters, that they come with true light and sound doctrine, that they teach the highest perfection of virtue, and that they move the soul with great force to seek it. Such is the nature of the gifts that descend from the Father of lights. James 1 verse 17. They bring security through humility, and humility without despair. They grant confidence alongside vigilance, and vigilance with peace and tranquility, ensuring that these dispositions do not hinder the fulfillment of the divine will. And you, my soul, offer the Lord humble and fervent gratitude, for he has been so generous with you, though you have done so little to deserve it. He has enlightened you with his divine light, opened to you the treasury of his secrets, and prepared you with a holy fear of displeasing him. But use this fear with moderation, and let your love surpass it. With these two wings, you will rise above all things earthly and above yourself. Seek to cast away at once any disordered affection that causes you excessive fear, and entrust your cause to the Lord while making his cause your own. Fear only until you are purified and cleansed of your faults and ignorance. And love the Lord until you are entirely transformed in him, making him the sole master and guide of your actions, so that you no longer govern yourself in any matter. Do not rely on your own judgment, nor be wise in your own estimation. Cf. Proverbs 3 verse 7. For self-judgment is easily blinded by passions and carried away by them, and together they lead the will astray. This results in fearing what should not be feared and hesitating where one should not delay. Be secure in such a way that you do not indulge in frivolous interior satisfaction. Doubt and fear only until you find the proper balance in all things with a vigilant serenity. You will always find this balance if you submit to the obedience of your superiors and to what the Most High works in you and teaches you. And even when the desired outcome is good, all things must be discerned under obedience and counsel, for without this direction, they often result in confusion and fruitless efforts. In all things, be attentive to what is most holy and perfect.